into the future and the need to build confidence across this chamber and acceptance of the reality that I'm stood here as the First Minister, needing to work with different people to make the institution work. For what we have done in devolution, it has required different people to work together. Last week we celebrated Wales becoming the second best recycling nation on earth. That is a deliberate choice we have made in the government, partnerships within this place and outside it for it to happen. We can be really proud of what we have done in devolution, and I certainly am. So I'm committed to behaving in a way that allows this institution to carry on meeting the needs of people in Wales, to respect the choices they make at the ballot box, and to think about all the things we can still do to make Wales an even better place for all the communities we are privileged to represent in this place.
First Minister, last week you went from this chamber and gave an interview. You questioned myself in that interview the time that I took off for my illness. I was told at one point in that illness to put my affairs in order, First Minister. Your deputy also questioned that on the Politics show and highlighted it. The chair of the Labour group went on Sharp End last night and cited my absence here as well from illness. I can tell you, I was ill. And I had numerous interventions from hospital doctors and other clinicians. To go out from that debate last week and accuse me of not honouring the pairing system and then citing my own illness is the lowest of low. Now, it is a fact, First Minister, that in confidence votes, all members would be expected to vote. There is the facility in this institution to have hybrid voting, to have proxy voting and in-person voting. And that are three options that would have been available to any member. You have subsequently said that those two members who were absent last week would have voted for you. Are you convinced that they would have cast their vote for you, First Minister?
I think we need to take a step back and to reflect on some of the facts. It is a fact that in previous confidence votes there have been pairs. I can tell you that directly. In March last year, when the Conservative and Plaid Cymru voted in a confidence motion against Eluned Morgan, I made clear my position in full support for the job Eluned Morgan was doing, but I did that remotely because I was paired for the debate. I was in America leading a trade mission. So confidence votes do have pairs around them. That is an established convention. And the second point around what had happened, I think, referring to the facts. The fact is that for around about 3 months, we paired in every instance on every vote. And it was the right thing to do because I accept completely that you were not well enough to take part, not well enough to turn on a screen. And that's as it should be. It's exactly as it should be, but that didn't take place last week. Now, it's not for us to have a running commentary on the two people who are not well. It's really important we think about that. And that isn't just an issue for my own political group. It is an issue for us as an institution. I want those people to be able to come back when they're well and able to do so, to be reintegrated not into just my own political grouping, but actually within the institution. And I think a lot about the choices I've made in trying to protect other people, in trying to make sure there's room for those people to have a route back, because I think that matters. And it's why I've been prepared to take blows and to not respond to different things that have been said, because that's part of my job in being a leader. So it's how I have behaved, it's how I will behave, and I think everyone should reflect on not just what was done last week with the vote, but actually everything around it and the comments that were made as well. It is a responsibility for all of us, and in the future, I will want my group to carry on where people are ill, to make sure that pairs are provided in all votes of consequence, as we have done in the past.
On the example you gave, I believe standing orders indicate that if you're out of the country, you can't vote anyway. You can't then. So you couldn't have voted in that vote anyway. So that's a very poor example to use. But it is a fact that there were 3 different modes of voting that was available to those members if they were incapacitated and unable to come in here. I put the question to you. I appreciate the I forget what role you have at the moment, member for Swansea West, but the point I am making to you is that there is 3 options that were available to those members to vote. They chose not to exercise their confidence in you, First Minister. The issue you have here is there was a vote in this chamber on confidence in you as First Minister. You and senior London Labour figures have chose to tarnish this institution by saying it is of no consequence, it is irrelevant. And in fact, your comments around the referendum, for example, when it comes to issues around the current UK government, having 2 referenda for devolution should mean that there is a level of respect for not just the institution, but for our individual role as members. The previous First Minister is on the record as saying, if a motion gets the support from the floor of the Senedd, then that will be the democratic will of the Senedd itself. You clearly aren't taking the will of the view of the Senedd into account when you're not respecting that vote last week. And it is causing huge damage, reputational damage to this institution. You need to act on that vote, and that's what I'm asking you today. What are you going to do to respect that vote that was taken here last week that withdrew the confidence of the Welsh Parliament from your tenure as First Minister?
I go back again saying, of course, I take proceedings in this place seriously. I always have done. I always have done, and I always will. I've been the First Minister for a limited period of weeks. I take seriously what was said in the debate and the fact that people cast their votes. I am rightly concerned, I believe, in the fact that 2 of our members were not able to do so. And that is the point, Andrew R.T. Davies. They were not able to do so. And actually, the commentary that runs behind it, trying to second-guess how unwell those members are, I think is deeply damaging. And again, think again on what those people are now listening to. Not the opportunity to come back and be reintegrated into this Parliament when they are well enough to do so, but actually wanting to reach judgments in their name. I don't think that helps anyone, and I don't think it reflects well on the argument that you're making. I do believe that the proceedings of this place should be respected. I do believe that the 2 referenda that have gone into creating the powers for this place should be respected. It's why I'm so genuinely offended by what the Conservative Secretary of State for Wales has had to say about wanting to take powers away, where the truth is he simply disagrees with the approach that we have taken. The idea that there is a general law and order reservation that allows a Conservative minister to override the will of this place, it beggars belief. That's been said, and it has been in the election campaign, in addition to the Drivers' Bill proposal. How can anyone come to this place and say our proceedings should be respected when that's the manifesto that you're supporting? The leader of the Welsh Conservative group supporting a proposal to take away powers from this place because you haven't won an election. Now, that can't be the way that the future of this place works. It just can't be. So I will go on making the argument for the future we could have, the future I want us to have after the 4th of July, the future that I will be happy to argue for right up to and all the way through to the Senedd elections in 2026, a reformed Senedd that will be returned by the people of Wales, and not just the record we'll have of the next 2 years, but the period of devolution, what we have done for our country, in partnership with others in this place and beyond. That's what I will be doing, and I'm very proud to carry on making that case.
Arweinydd Plaid Cymru.
Leader for Plaid Cymru, Rhys Iorwerth. Thank you very much, Llywydd.
Since the Senedd passed that motion of no confidence, Labour members have sought to excuse it away, even, yes, saying that it's other members from opposition parties who are to blame for insisting on exercising our rights to vote. Yeah, the pairing issue is an absolute red herring. The First Minister knows that, and he needs to stop pulling the wool over people's eyes. There's only ever been 1 vote of no confidence in a First Minister before. That was 24 years ago, and there was certainly no pairing on that day. Now, we've even had the Labour social media team using the party's credit card to pay for ads that imply that opposition parties should somehow never agree with one another, even though Labour and the Conservatives vote together all the time here in this Senedd, and that Labour were perfectly happy to link up with the Tories on a recent no-confidence issue in Scotland. He can't have it both ways. It's a pretty hollow-sounding moral crusade from the First Minister. Now, let's get back, shall we, to the substance of this issue. The First Minister wants a new start. But it doesn't work like that, does it? I'm sure Rishi Sunak would love to have a new start too, but I'm not going to forget 14 years of destructive Tory policies. And yes, the First Minister may want to wish away the £200,000 donation scandal, where the Welsh public clearly think he's shown such poor judgment, but he can't. But for any kind of reset, he must first address the problem. Does an apology in any way fit in with his idea of a new start?
So there are, I think, 3 points to respond to. The first is, of course, I regret the way that the last 3 months have been covered and reported, and I regret the impact of the choice I made within all of the rules at the time, and I would not want either myself or any of my colleagues to have had to go through that again. I recognise that there has been real damage caused to a range of people in this place. It's why I've agreed immediately to an internal review within my own party to look at how we run our affairs. It's why I've also asked the Standards Committee on a cross-party basis to consider the rules that should apply to all of us, regardless of which party we're in. And that is me taking seriously the position that we find ourselves in. And I think on your second point around pairing is not a red herring. The pairing that takes place is to maintain the democratic judgment of the public at the ballot box. And that is what pairing achieves. When you go back to 24 years ago, the arithmetic was very different in the chamber. If pairing had taken place in the way it has done and normally does, then actually we'd have had a different outcome. But the vote took place, and the numbers are the numbers on the day. And I don't think it is an extraordinary thing to want to have a new start for a job that I've been in for 2 months, that I've been proud to not just win a leadership contest, but actually to come into this place with the support of people from across the chamber and indeed within my own group. And it's important to recognise that we came together after an internal leadership contest are difficult. But I recognise the way that different people have come together to want the government to work and to want to do it in a way that is unified, not just for our party, but actually the job we have to do for the country. And within that, I know that the leader of Plaid Cymru points and claims about us regularly voting with others. Last week, the vote to take down a Welsh Labour First Minister took place. The attack on the government that took place was a cooperation between His Cymru and the Conservatives. That's what happened. And I don't think there's any challenge in pointing that out as we go through the heightened politics of a general election campaign and as what you might want to do in the future. I'm interested in how this government works and functions and delivers on the manifesto we have already been elected on and the promises I've made as the leader as to how we can improve the country. That's what I'm interested in doing. It's what I'm committed to do.
I wish the First Minister could see himself. I really, really do. And I'll read his words back to him. I regret the way the last 3 months have been covered and reported. I regret the way the last 3 months have been covered and reported. So it's the way this has been covered. It's the way it's been reported. I'm a former journalist, still a member of the National Union of Journalists. Are you blaming journalists for this? Are you blaming opposition members for the way that we voted in that vote last week? What we have here is the First Minister's judgment repeatedly being called into question. We've got the donation from a convicted polluter, but then there was the issue of how a minister was recently sacked too, one of those not here last week. It's been confirmed today that no formal leak inquiry was held before the First Minister decided to sack Hannah Blythe. In a letter to the Public Accounts and Public Administration Committee, the Welsh Government's Director of Propriety and Ethics also suggests that no proper investigation was held under the ministerial code either. Sacking a minister is a serious matter, but it seems that the normal safeguards of natural justice weren't afforded to the former Deputy Minister in this instance. I think we need an independent investigation here to determine whether the First Minister did act with the required due diligence and within the rules which govern decisions of this significance. At the very least, will the First Minister explain on what evidence and on whose advice was he acting when he did sack Hannah Blyden?
One of the challenges in making choices as a leader is you have to not just think about what the right choice is, but you also have to consider that it's only you that can make the decision, and you have to consider and balance a range of different consequences. In coming to a decision, I did take advice from the Permanent Secretary about the process to make sure I was acting within the ministerial code. Publishing evidence will actually be something that I don't think helps people involved and engaged around this. And I have always been trying to protect other people from the consequence of what takes place if unredacted information is published fully. I still think that's the right choice to make. It makes my life difficult, but it's the right thing to do. And that's what your job is as a leader. So the redacted information has been published. The evidence, such as it is relatively straightforward, and that's why there wasn't a need to go through an additional process. That's the advice I took from the Permanent Secretary. I'm confident I've acted within the Ministerial Code and the Cabinet Handbook. And if you think this is a route to helping the member who isn't able to take part in Senate business at present, I think you should reflect again on where this leads and the different responsibilities we have. I do not think this is a helpful way to want to reintegrate that member, as I wish to do so, into the active business of this place.
Everybody's meant to reflect apart from himself, it seems. Now, I can't let this question session pass either without highlighting some troubling attitudes from Labour towards the Senedd in recent days. The First Minister, we know, is totally dismissive of the democratic view of this Senedd, as seen in that vote last week, and the contempt, frankly, from Labour's London headquarters was in full show on Sunday by Emily Thornberry, senior member of Keir Starmer's team, would-be Attorney General. It was as dismissive an attitude towards this Senedd and its procedures as I have ever heard, to be honest. But perhaps the most revealing interview was that given by Transport Minister Ken Skates on Politics Wales. The priority for the Labour Welsh Government, he said, was to support the UK Labour election campaign. Now, I want to get rid of the Tories more than anyone, but surely their priority in government should always be to serve the people and communities of Wales rather than their own electoral interests. Doesn't this make a mockery of Keir Starmer's claim to put country before party?
No, and if you look at what we have done just since First Minister's questions last week, I've been part of the manifesto process within my party, and I'm confident that we will put forward an offer that will make a significant positive difference for Wales and Britain. I'm confident that will help us to gain the confidence of the people of Wales at the ballot box on the 4th of July, and all of the opportunities that will open up for us. More than that, just in this last week, I've been meeting my duties to the government and the people of Wales. Not only the announcements that we've made on the progress we're making. So I've earlier pointed out that Wales is now the second best recycling nation on earth. No mean achievement, given where we started at the start of our devolution journey. I've done the right thing and done my duty in attending the D-Day events in Normandy. A real privilege to do so and to see the extraordinary sacrifice of others. I've had the work with the BMA and the Health Secretary on making sure there is an offer that all three branches of the BMA who are in dispute are recommending that offer. That is not an easy thing to do. And we've managed to do that by working through all of the noise in public, the serious work that has gone on with the Health Secretary to get to that point. And that will make a real difference to people in every community across Wales if that strike action permanently comes to an end. And yesterday, I was in Port Talbot, yet again making the case for jobs in the steel sector, not just in Port Talbot, but in Shotton, Trostre, Llanwern and Capnic in Caerphilly as well, making the case for the company to look again at where we could be in just a few weeks' time. The reality, those jobs do not have to go. There is a different way of getting the best deal for steel. And I was proud to be there with the local member, David Rees, proud to be there with the Economy Secretary, Jerry Miles, and 2 members who could be part of a future UK Labour government. We have responsibilities in the here and now that we're meeting, and I also am absolutely positive and confident and make no apology for looking at what we could do for our country in just a few weeks' time with a different partnership for Wales and Britain. I believe people will vote for that partnership, and I look forward to the verdicts of the people.
Cwestiwn 3, Llyr Griffith.
Diolch, Llywydd.
Thank you, Llywydd. How is the Welsh Government working with the UK Government to tackle child poverty?
Diolch am y cwestiwn. Welsh ministers and officials engaged with the UK Government through a range of bilateral and multilateral fora on a range of issues to try and help tackle poverty and improve outcomes for low-income families. We are always keen to stress the importance of tackling poverty in all its guises as our priority. Unfortunately, we do not believe that the current UK Government has been a positive partner in reducing child poverty.
We know, don't we, First Minister, that 29% of children in Wales are living in poverty. That's one of the highest rates in the UK. And we've debated here in the past how Labour in Wales scrapped the 2020 goal of eradicating child poverty and how we have a child poverty strategy without statutory targets. But as you say, the situation here has been made worse by the UK Government, particularly the Conservatives' cruel two-child benefit cap on families, which leaves the poorest families thousands of pounds out of pocket and adversely affecting more than 1 in 10 children in Wales. Now, unbelievably, Sir Keir Starmer has said that he won't be scrapping the cap. And at the same time, he's saying that he is committed to providing over £200 billion for the Trident nuclear project. Now, that clearly shows, does it not, that the UK Labour Party's priorities are actually in weapons of mass destruction and not supporting struggling families. Are those really your priorities as well, First Minister?
I think that's an extraordinary analogy to draw. I think when you look at where we will be with a manifesto that will be published in the coming days across the UK, with, as usual, a Welsh Labour manifesto as well to accompany it, I think you will see real ambition for the future of families, both to grow the economy, to have a positive partnership to provide the high-quality jobs that we could and should have in Wales. You'll also see ambition to ensure that people don't have to live with the indignity of low pay, what that will mean across a range of different sectors. And I think you'll see a genuine reforming approach to what had happened in the mess that is our current UK-wide benefit system. I think when the manifesto was published, the men will have good cause to think again about the ambition of what a future UK Labour government could do in partnership with this government, in addition to what we already do to directly put money into people's pockets. The way that we look to help and support families beyond that, not just the universal free school meals that we should all be proud of, that we are delivering, more than 20 million of them delivered here in Wales. The help we provide, whether it's prescriptions or a whole range of other areas on school uniform as well, we do those things deliberately to make a practical difference. Our means to make that difference needs to increase, and we need a different partnership with the UK government that understands why child poverty is a scourge, with the commitment to address and tackle it, as indeed the last Labour government did, in lifting hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. I'm proud of what we did in the past. I'll be prouder still to play a part in making a difference for children living in poverty here today.
And good afternoon, First Minister. A few of us have raised the issue of child poverty here in the Chamber, and I just wanted to perhaps take another angle on it, which is linking the green agenda with tackling child poverty here in Wales. The Children's Commissioner calls in her latest report that we should be providing free public transport for all under 18-year-olds as part of the Child Poverty Plan. The Youth Parliament here in Wales has also supported free public transport as well, as a way of promoting the use of public transport throughout the whole of Wales. And finally, Scotland has shown the tangible benefits with its free bus scheme for 5 to 21-year-olds, generating over 100 million journeys in its first year. So, First Minister, would you agree that providing free public transport is a means of tackling child poverty, and therefore will you do it? Diolch, Marianne.
There are many good ideas that we would like to take up now and in the future. There are also things we're already doing today, of course. So there are a range of schemes offering discounted and free travel for children and young people that we constantly keep under review. We have discounted bus tickets for under 22s through our My Travel Pass scheme. We also have free travel on rail services for under 16s in a number of circumstances where they're accompanied by a fare-paying adult in Wales already. But more than that, we have contactless pay-as-you-go ticketing across the South Wales metro area will be delivered later this year. I'm interested in how we have more means available to us. I would like to be able to deliver on a whole range of areas, but I need the resources for us to do so. And we've just gone through an incredibly painful process to get a budget that balances. I think in the future we may be able to do something along the lines of what the member suggests, but I need the resource that I don't have at present. And in the pragmatic choice, we've made choices about how and where we target our resources to make the biggest possible difference. That's the budget that we've passed. I look forward to a different horizon with greater hope and greater means to achieve our objectives in the future, and look forward to see if that will be enabled by the public votes on the 4th of July.
Pedwar Delyth Joel.
Will the First Minister provide an update, please, on the Welsh Government's legislative programme?
Yes, I will set out the Government's legislative priorities in my July legislative statement. The annual debate understanding orders covering policy objectives and the legislative programme will provide a further opportunities for members to consider an update on progress.
The turmoil that has faced your government in recent weeks has made people question whether you would stick to your word, First Minister. There are many vastly important bills which this government has promised to deliver, from bus reform to call tip safety and from tackling homelessness to the Welsh language. But people are nervous because since you took office, your government has backtracked on reforms to council tax, 20 miles an hour and changes to school holidays. You've signalled time and again that brave, progressive changes won't be made if it makes you and your government more unpopular. So what certainty can we have that you will bring forward these bills and that they won't be watered down or be made less ambitious in any attempt to preserve your own leadership?
The reason why we've reviewed a range of the areas of activity is partly because we've made pledges to do so. 20 miles an hour is a good example. We'd already pledged to have a review of implementation to see whether we need to make any sort of changes, and we're listening to the public in doing so. I don't see that as a weakness, it's a strength. And if you look at the first set of data around the changes in speed limits, it does show, as we said, there are fewer casualties. It's about the refinement of that to make sure we're getting it right in all the different areas after more than 6 months of experience. If you look at what we have been doing and the legislative programme, we're actually creating more space to make sure we can deliver on the radical reforming legislation that will come forward in that legislative programme. It will be a strength to see the space given over and the ability to deliver on a whole range of areas. Now, I won't go through every single one of them because I have a legislative statement in early July to do so, but I believe the member will see the ambition of this government to radical reform that makes a real difference with and for the people of Wales, that goes back to our manifesto and looks to deliver it, will be there, bright as ever, and I'll be proud to leave a government that will actually deliver that and make the difference we have promised to do so.
Samuel Kurtz.
Since being elected First Minister, you've U-turned on reform to the school year, delayed the sustainable farming scheme and attempted to change the rhetoric around the default 20 miles per hour policy without actually changing anything. So this is a Labour government so bereft of new ideas that is now changing policies that it itself introduced that we've been campaigning against. So thank you. So wouldn't you agree with me, First Minister, that this is a Welsh Labour government out of ideas and led by a First Minister who's hanging on by a thread?
Well, it's interesting that the member now decries action he was asking for. The fact, actually, that last week we had the first round table on taking forward the sustainable farming scheme. We are committed to a scheme that supports high-quality food and drink production and meets our obligations for the climate and nature emergencies that we face. That is what we are doing, and we're giving ourselves the space to do so. And when it then comes to the rest of his comments, I admire the fact that he's advertising for a future vacancy to his group. I actually think that when the public come to vote, they will look for a positive partnership for Wales and Britain. They will look to what his party has done. They will look to the way that his party has assaulted devolution, taken our money and taken our powers, and reflect that that cannot be the right answer for Wales. I look forward to what we will do in the future. I look forward to the member retaining his place in the benches of opposition where he belongs.
Rhiannon Passmore.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, the Welsh Labour government was resoundingly re-elected by the people of Wales in 2021 to deliver a stronger, fairer and greener Wales. First Minister, as you contemplate your first legislative statement that you're due to deliver to the Senedd before the summer recess, on behalf of my constituents in Islam, can I ask you to consider how the Welsh Labour government can best legislate to improve their lives? The proposed bus reform bill is critical and crucial to improving public transport throughout Islam, but in particular to the surrounding communities of Pont-Lanfraith and Blackwood, served only by bus. And this is to be placed firmly at the doors of the policy of the UK government. The utterly failed Thatcherite system of deregulation from the 1980s must be consigned to the scrap heap by this Welsh Parliament. The coal tip safety bill is a positive step forward in addressing those industrial scars on our environmental landscape, albeit still at present totally unsupported by the UK Tory government. However, as we have seen in communities like Anstey and Isline, with very strong concerns around the Bedworth tip proposals, coal tip remediation cannot be done at any cost. So, First Minister, with both the bus bill and the coal tip safety bill, what dialogue will your government have with progressive authorities throughout the rest of the United Kingdom, including the new UK government, after this critical general election? Thank you.
Now, I think the member sets out again the case for reform that we've committed to in the past. I look forward to delivering a legislative statement that shows how we will take forward measures that we're committed to. The bus bill and the coal tip safety bill, those won't be the technical titles of the bill, but both of those will deliver a real difference, I believe, in providing a legislative statement to allow us to invest in a future that makes sense. Because we do know that for all of our investment in rail, it is making a real difference in the communities served by rail. There are many others, including in my own constituency, but all around Wales, that are only served by bus. We need greater sense in how the buses are regulated and how we invest then in a system that is truly sustainable. Work has already taken place in some other parts of the UK. I look forward to working with a future UK Labour government to do so on the bus bill and indeed on coal tip safety. The legislation needs to come alongside the willingness to work together and to recognise some of the responsibilities are reserved, some are for us to deliver. A partnership with willing people who recognise the legacy we are now dealing with is exactly what we need for her community and many others around Wales.
Question 5, Natasha Ashka.
Thank you so much, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the provision of healthcare services for children and young people in South East Wales?
The Government is committed to ensuring high-quality healthcare provision for children and young people in Wales. A comprehensive range of policies and programmes implemented across the Government play a pivotal role in improving health outcomes and promoting child health and well-being for children right across Wales.
Thank you so much for that response. I was recently contacted by a constituent with a plea for help regarding a heartbreaking case. 3-year-old Luna from Chepstow has recently been diagnosed with a rare and life-limiting condition known as MPS 6. Her specialist doctor under an Iron Bevan University Health Board recommended enzyme replacement therapy as the most viable treatment option to prolong life and maintain a good standard of living. And whilst the funding request for the treatment was initially deemed not cost-effective by the relevant authorities, I was delighted to learn that at the end of last week, Luna's family officially received approval that ERT would be provided to her through the NHS Wales. Now, they, of course, are absolutely over the moon. However, this did not come without an official appeal against the authorities' decisions by Luna's doctor and her family having to campaign campaigned for Luna to receive this treatment at an incredibly stressful time. While speaking with campaigners, I discovered differences in treatment from different strains of the condition. Welsh Government had previously given approval for MPS 1 to 4 to be treated with ERT in Wales. However, MPS 5 and 6 are not yet officially covered. So, First Minister, can you commit today that the Welsh Government will look into future options for expanding ERT treatments for MPS 5 and 6 as a first point of call, so future families that are going through this do not have to campaign for treatment for their loved ones? Thank you.
I don't think I can, at First Minister's questions, give commitments on individual conditions and individual treatments. I do, though, recognise the member's right to raise matters on behalf of her constituents. What I'd ask is that if she'll write to the Cabinet Secretary for Health with the details so we can understand if there are policy issues to address. At the start of my time as a member some time ago in 2009, we were still having debates in this place about individual patient funding requests for treatment and how consistent those were across the country. It's the reason why, during my tenure as the Health Minister, we introduced the new treatment fund that is still making a difference in making sure that new evidence-based treatments are available on a more consistent basis and, crucially, on a more rapid basis across NHS Wales. Now, I can't tell from the information the members given, and nor could I realistically, about whether this is an issue that falls within an individual patient request or something that could be covered by our approach to ensuring that evidence-based treatments are available. That's why I'd ask her to write to the Cabinet Secretary for Health so we can get a properly considered response to her and indeed any of the families who may be in the same position.
Question 6, Mike Hedges.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What assessment has the First Minister made of river pollution levels?
Thank you. The Welsh Government is taking an integrated catchment approach to combat river pollution, cooperating with all sectors involved. We work closely with other arms of government, regulators and others, including through our river pollution summits. The next summit is in July, which I will co-chair with the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Change and Rural Affairs.
Thank you for that answer. River pollution is a problem across Wales, so the Y and us having serious problems with pollution. With the River Tower, we have raw sewage discharge, agricultural pollution and microplastics. Agriculture is a leading cause of water problems globally. Fertilizers, pesticides and animal waste from farms and livestock operations can easily wash into rivers during rainfall, contaminating the rivers. Excess nitrogen and phosphorus in water is a significant threat to water quality. These nutrients can lead to algal blooms, including toxic blue-green algae, which can harm both people and wildlife. I'm requesting the Government commissions an independent review of river pollution, starting with the Tower, Usk and Wye.
The member raises an important point that I believe goes across party lines. Our challenge is how we take effective action to reduce river pollution that is an active problem for biodiversity within our rivers, but also affects land use as well. It's why the River Pollution Summit is such an important process. I've seen the evidence on the apportionment of phosphorus loading into rivers, and the evidence that's been peer-reviewed does show that it's rural land use that has the biggest impact. It's why we've got to have a conversation around this, not just with people that make use of rural land, but actually with a range of other sectors too. That's part of what the River Pollution Summit process allows us to do. We're also going through NRW's fourth cycle of river basin management plans. That's a key mechanism for improving water quality. I do think as we go through that, as we get to draft stages, it'll be worth a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Change and Rural Affairs about whether there's an opportunity for an independent peer review at that point around the plans. Now, that's something that I think it's well worth the conversation between the member and the Cabinet Secretary to understand how we get some objectivity into not just what the plans are, but how effective they're likely to be, and then how they get reviewed as they're implemented.
James Evans.
First Minister, there is a worrying lack of accessibility when it comes to reporting pollution instances to Natural Resources Wales. Numerous constituents have contacted me about the difficulty reaching their enforcement teams, especially via the phone, with one person, when they finally got through, being told by Natural Resources Wales we physically don't have the people here to respond to emails or answer telephone calls. This communication barrier is actually undermining public confidence in the regulator's ability to tackle water pollution. So So can you outline what plans does the Welsh Government have to support NRW to address these communication issues, so when river pollution is seen, it can be reported and dealt with in a timely manner?
I think it's a fair point the member raises about how members of the public can contact NRW and actually have a response that demonstrates that the issue they raise is being taken seriously, and then the ability of NRW as the regulator to be able to act on that information as well. There are always challenges about resources. It's an undeniable fact that over the last 14 years we have taken money out of services we'd rather invest in. I'm interested in what a new partnership would look like, but equally how we get the best out of the resources we have, which I think is really the member's point and the member's question. Again, I'd be grateful if he'd write to the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs and Climate Change to understand the particular issues his constituents have, to see if there is more we can do within NRW to make sure they're able to respond to the concerns that his constituents will raise. And I'd expect if his constituents are raising issues, then others will have similar concerns that we'd want to understand how we can take forward.
Cwestiwn 7, Peter Fox.
What assessment has the Welsh Government made of the number of children on NHS waiting lists in Monmouthshire?
I don't have data for Monmouthshire specifically, but comparing Aneurin Bevan Health Board data from April 22 to March 2024, the number of children's pathways on referral to treatment waiting lists over 2 years have reduced by nearly 78%, despite total waits for children's pathways rising just over 2% for the same period of time. So progress is being made.
Thank you, First Minister. I know you would agree with me that children waiting for treatment should be prioritised, certainly for certain conditions. But recent casework is showing that that isn't the case in my constituency. A young boy who's been experiencing knee pain was advised by a senior physiotherapist that he had significant damage to his ACL and MCL ligaments and needed an MRI scan. His GP also was concerned at the boy's lack of movement and made a referral to the orthopaedic specialist. The family received a letter that their son was on the waiting list. However, even though the boy was classed as urgent, there would be a 43-week wait time for an initial appointment. First Minister, I was shocked to hear this, and I've obviously written to the Health Board. My concern is that timely and fast treatment should be a priority for young children who are in a phase of physical development. They need to be dealt with quickly, for long-term consequences could be profound for them. So what action is the government taking to assess the scale of this problem, and what is your government going to do about it?
Look, again, I can't comment on the individual circumstances. I'm pleased that the member's written to the Health Board directly about it to understand if the wait times are accurate or indeed what could be done, bearing in mind the condition he describes. There is always a challenge about a number of the different things we need to do in and for the health service. One is the ministerial oversight, and the member will know that the Cabinet Secretary for Health regularly scrutinises waiting times performance in health boards, and actually is a key part of driving improvement within that. The other parts are resources, and in our budget, the member will know the NHS was the biggest area of additional spend, with a rise in more than 4%, which the member knows the relative figure in England was about 1%. So we are putting within our reducing real terms budgets more money into the NHS, but it doesn't mean that it's flush with resources, because actually most of that spend goes on to staff. And that comes back to my second point, which is about why it's been so important to have an offer that can get the 3 groups of doctors back to work and resolve the industrial action. You need your staff in the service able to treat and look after people. But alongside that, not just to pay, there's a commitment to reform and productivity. It's a point that the Cabinet Secretary has regularly made, and she's right. We need to make sure that the productivity levels we saw before the pandemic are reacquired and then further improved. That isn't just about having enough people to do the job, it's how they work alongside other people to reduce the long waits we have got, and then to get away from putting lots of our resources into reducing waiting times, almost always for hospital-based treatment, into the service we want, with more investment further upstream in primary care and preventative services, to have a genuinely sustainable service into the future. That is exactly what we are doing. We need the resources, we need the reform, and we need to have staff who are in work and being productive around that, to do the job that they want to do as well.
Ac yn ola cwestiwn.
And finally, question 8, Luke Fletcher.
Diolch, Llywydd. What discussions has the First Minister had with Bridgend County Borough Council regarding support for residents adversely affected by the Arbed scheme?
I have not directly been involved in these discussions. Our officials are in regular contact with Bridgend County Borough Council. The Welsh Government awarded a £2.65 million grant fund to the Council for remedial works on affected homes. A fully accredited contractor has been appointed and mobilisation works are well underway to address the issues of very real concern.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. And I understand that Warm Works has been commissioned to deal with the insulation repair scheme, but residents in Caira in the Llanvi Valley have been contacting me with concerns. They've lost faith that anything will be sorted, given the amount of time that this has gone on for. They're concerned that there's no talk of compensation, despite residents needing to fork out thousands of pounds on repairs to their homes. This is, of course, a saga that has gone on for over a decade, and one constituent has told me that her daughter is 12. So for almost her entire life, she's lived in a home plagued with damp and has known nothing else. Now, I wouldn't accept these conditions. You wouldn't accept these conditions. So can I get a commitment from you today that the government will provide whatever support is needed to expedite this repair process in partnership with BCBC to put this right, but also as well to consider compensation for residents who entered this government's scheme in good faith but ended up getting burnt?
Well, it's worth just reflecting on the history and the reality of what the affected group of people have gone through. This was funding on the Arbed 2 scheme from 2014-15. Of course, Arbed 1 was introduced in the One Wales government. So this was building on the work that was done, and most homes under that scheme have seen a real benefit. However, where the work is not done appropriately, it does have a very real impact on conditions in the home. So the external wall insulation that was installed in Caira was funded by the UK government's Community Energy Saving Programme, and the real miss-up at the time is there was no requirement for guarantees for the quality of the work. Now, that has meant that people haven't had an individual remedy to go back to the installer. It's why the Council, through its own resources and with a Welsh Government grant, is now undertaking the remedial work. That was agreed previously by the then Minister for Climate Change, Julie James, who still retains responsibility for housing, and the work is now being undertaken. It is important the work is done and done to high standard, and we then need to see if there is a future remedy for the individual homeowners. The challenge always is if either the council or the government provide additional resource for the people affected, that's resource that can't go into other areas. But I recognise there's a very real injustice for those people. So I'd want to keep an open conversation with residents, the council, and indeed our own housing department. But the priority must be to make sure the work is done to a proper standard and people receive the benefit they thought that they were signing up to.
Thank you, First Minister. The next item is the business statement and announcement, and I call on the Trefnydd to make that statement, Jane Hutt. Thank you, Llywydd. 2 oral statements have been added to today's agenda, namely on the context for and approach to the next spending review period, and on 6 goals for urgent and emergency care 2 years on. Draft business for the next 3 weeks is set out on the business statement and announcement, which is available to members electronically.
Dara Miller.
Diolch, Llywydd. Trefnydd, I'd like to call for a statement from the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Change on household recycling. I'm delighted that due to the hard work of residents across Wales, Wales has one of the best recycling rates in the world. That's great news. But we also need to make sure that recycling is easy for people and that local systems work. Labour-led Denbighshire Council has just spent millions on scrapping its popular, easy-to-use and high-performing blue wheelie bin commingled recycling collection service, and instead it's replaced it with a very unpopular trolley box system, which has been making recycling a nightmare for local residents, and it's cut down the residual waste collections to every 4 weeks. Now, the rollout, I have to say, has been an absolute shambles. Waste collections have been missed, there's bin clutter all over the streets, and litter everywhere too, and it simply isn't good enough. So can I urge the Welsh Government to, instead of promoting curbside recycling only, can I urge you to promote simpler household recycling systems, such as that which was previously used in Denbighshire, to require bins also to be collected at least once a fortnight in the interest of public health? And can we have a statement which confirms that that is the approach that the Welsh Government will take? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren Miller. And yes, I'm glad you welcome this fantastic announcement that Wales is now second in the world for recycling. Testament, I would say, to the partnership working. I mean, it's partnership working that supported our journey, including the vital role of our local authorities, including Denbighshire County Council, of course, and increasing that amount and quality of resources that local authorities collect for recycling. Just in terms of the introduction by Denbighshire of their new recycling service, we welcome this introduction. It should put them in a very good position to achieve the 70% minimum target, which begins this financial year. And, you know, I recognise they launched their new recycling waste service on the 3rd of June. Denbighshire have moved to a service which is in line with the Welsh Government's best practice set out in the collections blueprint. You asked for that to be confirmed. I can. But also, just to say, in terms of preparation, Denbighshire have been working on the implementation of the new curbside sort service for the past couple of years. That's working with their public, the people they represent, in preparation for that 70% minimum recycling rate that came into force in April 2024. And also in implementing our collections blueprint, which is aligned to the new workplace recycling requirements. And let's just remember what this is going to achieve for us, for the planet, let alone for Wales. It means that we collect high-quality recycling, which can then be fed back into the economy, and Wales's high recycling rate has already contributed to a saving of around 400,000 tonnes of CO2 every year. So I'm grateful for the question that I can put all of that on the record this afternoon.
Helen Vaughan.
Diolch Llywydd. Trefnydd, I'd like to request a statement from the Cabinet Secretary for Culture and Social Justice outlining the discussions that have taken place with South Wales Police following the arrest last week of 19 pro-Palestine activists in less than 48 hours. An extensive list of signatories have signed a statement with calls directed at South Wales Police, but also calling on the political establishment to respect the right to protest. One of those arrested in Swansea was a 12-year-old Palestinian child, and many others here in Cardiff are students. The police approach is obviously directed by the cruel UK legislation regarding protest, but I'd like to know the Welsh Government's position on this and how we ensure that people are able to protest and show support when that is very much needed.
O, diolch yn fawr, Helen Vaughan, and you raise a really important question. Obviously, as a Welsh Government, we have stood up and spoken for and really embraced the right to protest, and right to protest, of course, which has been threatened and undermined by UK government legislation, which indeed we resisted. And as you recall, when I was in the role as Minister for Social Justice, we addressed those points and the impact it would have on our democratic, this is about our democratic right to protest, but also in relation to the specific incidents, and you've given an example today. Well, I will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Culture and Social Justice to look into this particular circumstances and situation, and perhaps just to say that, you know, we recognise that throughout, not just Wales, but across the UK, there are these protests. There's peaceful comings together of people raising the issue of what is happening in the Middle East, and to recognise how important this means to the people who are infected, because of course it's community cohesion and recognising that this is an area where, you know, we want to engage with the communities, all the communities that are affected.
Gareth Davis.
Can I also ask for another update from the Welsh Government on the disastrous trolley box bin rollout in Denbighshire? This, of course, comes within